I'm Suzanne. I am a writer, an author, and a teacher.
And I am Mychal. I am a sommelier, tarot card reader, and former ballerina.
Welcome to All the Woo A to Z.
As always, we'd like to just say that we'd like for this to be a safe space for you and us both. It's a non-judgmental space where we're just sharing our own experiences and understandings of these topics. And so if you are just woo curious, or if you are super deep into the woo-woo, at the very least, we hope that you are entertained.
Today is Y for yes and no, or more accurately, for the pendulum that Mychal is going to teach me how to use and find yes and no.
Yes.
No.
Sorry. So today we are going to be enjoying a California Grenache. And I really like the name of this one. It's called The Language of Yes, which is very much, I think, appropriate. On brand. This is coming from the Santa Maria Valley. And like I said, it is a Grenache from the Rancho Vineyard. And it's a 2022. So ultimately, if you do a little research on this winemaker, he really talks about interpreting what the soil is telling him to do. And so that very much is in alignment with the pendulum, really trying to interpret what the answers are. So there we are.
On brand.
Okay, Suzanne, what do you want to know? Sorry.
So I have a pendulum.
Yes.
Do you want to describe to the listener who may not know what a pendulum is, other than a device in an Edgar Allan Poe story?
True. One of my ancestors. Okay. So the pendulum is it's a well-balanced item. Most of the time you can purchase them as it almost looks like a rounded triangle. So it comes down to a point. You want it to be equally weighted. I know you can use other items in place of this, but if you do use another kind of size, style, shape, you want to make sure that it's equally weighted all the way around and is hanging from a chain, a string, something like that.
Okay. So I have equally weighted all around pointed thing hanging on a chain. I bought it as a pendulum.
Yes.
I have used it as a pendulum.
Yes.
But not very well, not very often. And I feel like it kind of got mad at me after a while because I wasn't using it.
It was holding grudges against you. Okay, so how about I ask you this? How were you going about using it? Like, what was your method as far as your system of utilizing?
So first I would take it out and I would tell it good morning or good afternoon or whatever.
Okay.
And then I would hold it with the point in the center of my palm so that I have some sort of stability. Mm-hmm. And then I would move my palm away. And then I would say, please give me a strong yes or a strong no. Mm-hmm. I would ask specifically for one of those, not both of them, and see what shape it made. And then I would ask for the opposite and see what shape it made. Mm-hmm. And then I would ask whatever my question is.
Okay. And so you'd start off the hand and do it. Okay. And then how were you kind of phrasing your questions? I know that that's a broad
right
way.
Trying to make them as much a yes-no question as possible. So that, and for me, mine were mostly about food.
I know where you're coming from on this. I know why, actually. Yes.
I don't know about y'all, but I have a varied diet, and there are some days where something just isn't going to be a good decision, but I don't necessarily know that. But my body will is the basis, the reasoning behind using a pendulum. And so, asking are potato chips or chocolate cake good for you is never going to be but is this a chicken day? And a yes or no.
I mean, chocolate cake could be a question that you could ask. You could be like, is it
and
like
then
gonna
that's
make you
why
feel
my
good?
pendulum is rolling its eyes at me. Yes.
You're like, what do you think? Is this supposed to be the no answer? No.
We'll tell you what you want to hear, lady.
Well, I think that the pendulum might actually say yes, because it could just be, as I like to say it, I'm such an enabler when it comes to desserts. Some things are just good for your soul. And if it's stressing you out to not have chocolate cake because you've been craving it for like a week, then you should probably just have some chocolate cake.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
In which case, I wouldn't ask the pendulum.
Just have the chocolate cake. Okay. All right. The reason why I'm asking all these questions is because, and I also see how you're holding it. So for those of you who are not in this closet with us, let me clarify. The way that she's holding it, she has it in her right hand, hovering over her left hand. But the amount of distance that she's given the chain itself to the pendulum is pretty short. I'd say it's about 2 inches, 2.5 inches.
Should it be longer?
I would give it a little bit more space to maneuver, especially because your chain, you have it doubled up. So I would want to give it some space. And the other thing that I like to make sure is how it's dangling from. So yeah, what you were just doing right now is a good idea. So what was different.
Or I could just do it this way, but that seems
excessive.
Now I'm holding the entire thing.
Chain extended out, so it's like 6 inches or something like that, right? Okay, so I've seen others also hold their pendulum where it's kind of just like draped over their finger, and I kind of say not such a good idea to do it draped over, just because it has a tendency to influence more one direction than another direction.
Okay.
So for myself,
One does not want to try and cheat the pendulum.
Correct. So you want to try to have it where its chances of moving from you and away from you versus side to side is not going to be influenced.
So pinching like this?
Yeah, like pinching I think is probably the better way of doing it. I'm sure there's probably other people out there that would disagree with me and say that that doesn't really matter. But if you're having some difficulty with getting responses, I think that it also allows it a little bit more freedom to move. So that would be my other reasoning between like maybe changing how you're holding it a little bit.
Okay, so it's this.
Yeah, I think that that's good. And she's pinching it up the top, and she's giving it about 5 inches or so to hang. So I think that's plenty of space to maneuver where it can be as sensitive as it wants to be.
And I'm holding it very delicately.
Yes. I personally also always ask my guides. I mean, everybody can do what they want to do, but for myself, I typically open it up whenever I'm doing any kind of reading, whether it's a tarot card reading or pendulum reading. I always ask, Spirit guides, guardian angels, please protect and guide this reading in God's love, light, and truth, so that I know that I'm getting honest answers, right? And so that's what I'll kind of do to make
what she said?
Yes. Ditto. But that's the way that I kind of phrase it, to kind of open it up to tell, like, open up the lines of communication of who I want to be answering my questions.
Okay.
And because that's always important in these kinds of things, that you want to be very specific of who you're talking to.
And just in case you aren't aware, gentle listener, pendulum also uses the same sort of techniques as muscle testing.
Yes.
So if you have been in alternative or any other kind of care outside of Western medicine and they do muscle testing on you, this is using the same idea.
Yeah, and that's actually, I've had a naturopathic doctor say that because they were doing muscle testing to ask, and for myself, I have a hard time trusting my own method of muscle testing, and so I'll use my pendulum instead, and they agreed. They're like, yeah, basically one and the same, and if you ever want confirmation, when you come in, we can just double check if you want to with muscle testing. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be, but given how I have a tendency to do readings, that's how I will open it up to make it specific of who I'm talking to.
Okay.
And then from there, I always want to be careful of how I'm phrasing my question. So I know Suzanne's been holding it this whole time, like getting ready to do it. And I can tell her hand's starting to cramp, I think, from holding it. Sorry.
It's stressful to be very delicate.
Well, so the phrasing of the question, sometimes you have to rephrase things. So like if I'm asking if I should go do something, I mean, honestly, in my experience, the responses that I've gotten are kind of like, non-responses because they're kind of like, yeah, I mean, whatever you want to do. Like, that's fine. It's up to you. You have free will. Do what you want to do. Versus asking, is it in my highest benefit and the benefit of everyone concerned for me to do blah, blah, blah? And then it'll tell me yes or no. But before I even get there, I should, as Suzanne was saying, set up a standard for what yes looks like and what no looks like. And so I will say, and I don't do this every single time because I have my standard that now it's like known that this is my pendulum's go-to for yes and no. It was just kind of as I was getting used to it that I was asking, okay, show me what yes looks like. Show me what no looks like, and have it be.
And I feel like I'm almost at that part again. Let's starting over.
Yeah. And it's all a very personalized thing for everybody. Like my yes and no may look different from somebody else's yes and no.
And when we're saying yes and no and the shapes that we're looking at, does the pendulum swing in a counterclockwise or clockwise circle? Does it go back and forth or up and down? So that's what we're talking about when we're looking at the shape that it's presenting.
Yes. So as an example, for me, always, yes is coming towards me and away from me, back and forth that way. And no is literally as if you're shaking your head no. So left to right, left to right. So those are my yeses and my nos.
Okay.
When it's non-responsive, I normally take that either as I'm not supposed to know the answer.
Okay.
For whatever reason, or it's undefined.
Okay.
Right? And so like, okay, or sometimes it just means I need to ask my question differently. So I may give it one more rephrase, and if it's still the same, then I'll take that as that being that. So yes, obviously going to be important to ask a yes or no question. Don't have it be between two different things. I would always try to phrase it in a positive way versus a negative way. So should I do this versus what shouldn't I do? The universe, I notice, always has a tendency to respond
to what is as opposed to what isn't.
Correct. Yes. Let's see. Given those things, okay, let's ask a question for Suzanne.
Well, first of all, do we need to ask it for a yes and a no?
Sure. Go ahead and do that.
All right. Please show me a definitive yes. I think you're probably going to have to cut some time out of this particular episode. A bit of non-event.
That's okay.
Maybe a no?
Yeah, maybe get more wordy on your question. So say, pendulum, show me what no looks like.
Pendulum, show me what no looks like.
I see a little bit more movement. Not too much more. Another thing that you can do if you feel like it's too stable, like what yours is, you can start it moving. So you can move it in a circle and then stop the circle and then see what forms from there if it goes a particular direction. Okay, so you stopped it. Here, let me show you what I'm talking about.
Is it possible it doesn't work because it knows I'm a living mirror?
No, that's exactly why it should work. So, okay, so I'm trying it right now, and I'm going to say, show me what a yes answer looks like.
And so she has it a little bit dipped in, and she's dropped her hand a good few inches below it, as opposed to I was just a quarter of an inch, and she's getting a very definite her version of a yes.
Yes, so forward, back and forth. And then I would ask, okay, show me what a no looks like.
And she is now getting her no of the shaking head back and forth.
Yes. So I'm going to show you what I meant by moving it circular into getting an answer. So please show me once again what a yes answer looks like. And so I'll start it.
So she is sort of letting it swing to see what happens.
And then I stop the momentum of that swing.
But now it has moved into its line of yes.
Yes. So sometimes I think what can happen is that we get so caught up in making sure that our hand is super stable that we're fighting its natural movement to want to move, because It is going to rely on a little bit of response from your own motor skills. So instead of trying to fight any kind of natural movement that occurs in your hand,
So now it's moving back and forward. And what was your version of a yes?
forward and back.
Forward and back.
It's
Which is
doing
the
that.
most movement I've seen out of my pendulum.
Yeah. And the reason why I say don't fight your natural hand movement in
Is
it,
because that is the impulse that it's picking up.
yes. So you can say that that's the part of the muscle testing that's being active as an alternative to muscle testing, that it's your body reacting to the question. It can be that your guides are the ones who are causing your hand to move in that particular direction. It just is that you're not consciously trying to move your hand.
And now I have a no.
Okay. Yay!
Yay. Okay.
So more and more, I am going to say that as people do this, it takes some time to gain confidence in accepting the answers. That being said, if you're getting an answer, try not to ask the question over and over and over again because it takes away the power of the answer being given. You kind of have to take it and just take it if it's giving you an answer.
Yay.
Yay, Suzanne got movement.
So when you have a friend who has a dependable pendulum, this has not happened between me and Mychal at all.
Not once.
You call them and you're like, I'm
Hey.
thinking a question. Do you mind checking with your pendulum and see if the answer should be yes or no?
That has happened.
Probably a dozen times, which is one of the reasons why I was like, hey, so if you teach me how to do a pendulum on one of the episodes, and she was like, sure, sounds great.
I mean, it's fine. I know that it takes time. It took me some time to get used to it. And it's kind of similar to tarot cards, too, in that the pendulum that you have, you're also kind of developing a relationship with it, right? Even though the answer is kind of coming from multiple directions, your own body moving it is being a living thing as far as energy is concerned. So as you get to know it, it gets to know you, and you develop a relationship with it, which is kind of building that confidence level that I was talking about, right?
And I think the more it's like any muscle.
Yes,
The more that you use it, the better you get.
absolutely.
Which is why I didn't really feel bad calling you for something that was going to take you 15 seconds and it was going to take me 3 hours.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
And also it would feel much more real coming from you because you have a relationship with your pendulum, and my little pendulum has been ignored until recently.
Oh, sad, but that's okay. He's
It's
okay.
We're starting over.
Yeah, it's all right. Building bridges.
So what are the kinds of questions? We talked about food. So the questions that I called Mychal with in most cases were something that I had felt like I had just had a realization or a download of, and just wanted to kind of get a confirmation denial to whether or not to keep going down that path in some ways. So, but the yes and no is very, and I think that is rooted in actually the Urim and Thummin, which is what the Jewish high priest used to have, is 2 stones, and he would toss those and they would tell a yes or a no answer. And, Egyptians certainly had their version of that. Runes are a variation of that idea.
Throwing bones is another part, but that also gives more than a yes or no answer. Yeah, there's a lot of different versions of this. Even in tarot cards, you can do yes or no answers. When I do a tarot card reading, oftentimes if somebody's just asking me a straight up yes or no question, I will just use my pendulum because it's faster and easier. And I'm like, if that's all we need to know, then I don't need to shuffle and do all this stuff and get a lot of extra information. If that's it, then I will just use the pendulum. I always keep in mind, though, with anything that is divination oriented, that the future is malleable and changeable. So if you're asking about something that's going to happen in the future, and especially if it's something that you're asking about somebody else,
Right.
that things can change. So the answer that you're getting in that moment is the answer at that moment with everything that's in play at that time, and that you have the ability to change that answer, and so does the other person too if they choose to do that. So keep that in mind. So
Which I think is also maybe one of the cautionary parts of any kind of, quote, divination is stick in your own lane.
Yeah.
Like stay with, because as soon as you really start getting into involving other people, you start messing with their free will.
Yes.
And that's when I think you fade from, quote unquote, white magic to black magic.
Yeah. You want to just take on your own thing, which is why most of the time the majority of yes no questions that I ask are, especially if anything, whether or not I should do something or not,
Right.
is normally I'm asking what's in my highest benefit and the benefit of everyone concerned. Because at that point, I'm not asking what is going to happen. I'm asking about, I realize that I have a choice in what it is that I want to do. And I'm asking what is going to service not only myself in the best way possible, but everyone else too, right? Because sometimes it may be less about me and more about the good that it does for somebody else and me deciding to go to a party or, something super simple like that, which I know sounds ridiculous, but...
Or chicken. And for the number of people I know who have met their significant other at parties, I would say, no, it's a super big question to ask for parties.
Yeah, I mean, parties...
Especially ones that you're just sort of randomly invited to. Actually, I would say for those, don't ask your opinion, just go.
Yeah,
if it's just... If it's an off-the-cuff, spontaneous, you would have never been there before, go.
If you're like me and single, chances are you should probably just go to the party. Just go meet people. It's fine. Yeah. But ultimately, I try to ask questions like that, less about what's going to happen and more about what I should be considering, understanding, knowing about what's happening right now. I think that that's probably the better questions to ask anyway in any of these kinds of like divination scenarios. That's going to serve you the best. It's going to serve everyone else the best. And also keeping in mind that there's always, like I said, a sense of free will in everything that you're doing. So own that. Own that you have the ability to create your life and that something's not necessarily set in stone. So that's kind of how I would phrase a majority of my yes or no questions personally. And like we were saying with food, especially if you have like a kind of diet thing, it can be very illuminating on what your body likes more than something else.
And especially if you have sensitivities that sort of shift with the weather and your body's whatever process it's going through at the time, it can literally be the difference of should I have chicken today or should I not?
Yeah. All right, so I hope that was helpful to everybody. But moving forward is our last episode of A to Z.
Season
1, which we will do another season.
But our last episode is going to be Z. And it might be Z for live streams.
Okay. Or it may be Z for... Zodiac.
Some other work we come up with.
I don't know. We will, either way, we're going to tease you on this one.
We'll be back.
We will be back.
Thanks for joining us on All the Woo A to Z.